This story is not fiction. It is real history from Rahim Yar Khan, Pakistan. It is the journey of a middle-class person who passed through pain, loss, and silence, and then rose to become a star. Do not miss the remaining parts. Kevin belonged to a middle-class family. Life had never been easy on him, and maybe that was why he grew up faster than others. From a very young age, he learned one simple truth: nothing comes without struggle. He worked quietly, spoke less, and kept his emotions locked deep inside his heart. Love was not new to Kevin, but pain was. Before Farah, he had loved once, and that love had betrayed him. Lies, false promises, and abandonment had broken something inside him. After that experience, Kevin made a silent promise to himself that he would never trust a girl again. In his mind, love was nothing more than a beautiful lie that always ended in pain. Farah was very young then, studying in 7th grade. She was innocent, simple, and unaware of how cruel the world could be. There was a softness in her smile, something pure that made people feel calm without even speaking to her. Kevin worked near her house. They saw each other often, but without words, without names, without knowing that destiny was slowly bringing two different lives closer. They were strangers who noticed each other, nothing more. One evening, Kevin was standing on the rooftop of the house where he worked. His clothes were dusty, his body tired, and his mind heavy with thoughts. As he looked around, his eyes suddenly stopped on the opposite rooftop. Farah was standing there. She looked at him for a moment, hesitated, and then gently raised her hand and waved. It was a small gesture, simple and innocent, but Kevin's heart skipped a beat. Fear took over immediately. He turned his face away and whispered to himself that this would end the same way it always did: another lie. Another disappointment. Without responding, he went downstairs, convincing himself that ignoring emotions was the safest choice. That night, Kevin couldn't sleep. No matter how hard he tried, that small wave kept replaying in his mind. Still, he forced himself to believe that distance was better than attachment. The next day came like any other. Work, noise, exhaustion, and then evening arrived again. Kevin returned to the rooftop, and once again, Farah was there. This time her smile was clearer, more confident, as if she was waiting. She waved again, softly, patiently. Kevin stood still. For the first time in years, his heart fought back against fear. Slowly, almost unwillingly, he raised his hand and waved back. It was a small response, but it carried something heavy: hope. That single moment changed everything. No words were spoken, no promises were made, but something began that day. Evenings turned into a quiet routine. Rooftops became their silent meeting place. Sometimes it was just a smile, sometimes only a glance. One day, a small piece of paper fell onto Kevin's rooftop. It said, "Why do you always look so serious?" Kevin smiled, a smile he hadn't felt in a long time. He wrote back, "Because life forgot how to smile at me." The reply came the next day, "Then I'll teach life how to smile again." That line stayed with him. Slowly, those small notes turned into letters. Farah wrote about school, her dreams, her fears, and her innocent thoughts. Kevin wrote about work, responsibilities, and the wounds he never shared with anyone. One night, Kevin wrote honestly that he didn't trust girls and that love always ended in lies. Farah replied that she knew, and that was why she wasn't rushing. She wanted him to trust without fear. For the first time, Kevin felt something unfamiliar: safety. Time passed quietly. Farah grew older, Kevin grew stronger, and their bond grew deeper. There were no demands and no pressure, only understanding. Kevin always reminded her that her studies came first and that she should build her future. He told her he could wait. Farah always replied that she knew he would. Kevin didn't realize then that waiting would become the story of his life. At that moment, love was still pure, untouched by pressure, and unbroken by reality. And for the first time in years, Kevin believed that maybe not all love was a lie. What started as simple glances slowly turned into something deeper, something neither of them had planned. The rooftops were no longer just places made of concrete and dust. They became silent witnesses to a bond that was growing stronger with every passing day. Kevin and Farah began waiting for those evenings, not with impatience, but with a quiet excitement that lived inside their hearts. The letters became longer. Farah would write about her school days, her teachers, her small fears, and the dreams she was too shy to say out loud. She wrote about how she wanted to become someone her parents could be proud of. Kevin read every word carefully, as if her handwriting itself carried warmth. In return, he wrote about his work, his exhaustion, and the responsibilities that never left his shoulders. He never complained, but Farah could feel his struggle between the lines. Sometimes Kevin would disappear for days because of work, and Farah would wait anxiously for his next letter. When it finally came, she would read it again and again, finding comfort in his honesty. Kevin noticed how deeply she cared, and slowly, without realizing it, his fear began to soften. One evening, Kevin wrote something he had never written to anyone before. He told Farah about his past love, about how he had trusted someone completely and had been left broken. He admitted that this was the reason he kept his heart guarded. Writing those words made his hands shake, but Farah's reply came with a calm strength. She wrote that she did not want to heal him quickly or force him to trust her. She wanted to stay, to prove with time that not every promise was meant to be broken. Her words were simple, but they carried patience. That patience slowly rebuilt what Kevin thought was lost forever. Years passed like this. Farah moved from one class to another, growing more mature with every year. Kevin watched her change, not just in age but in understanding. He remained the same in one way, always protective, always careful that her education and future came before everything else. He never let love become a distraction for her. They were together for 6 long years, 6 years of waiting, understanding, and silent sacrifices. There were moments of doubt and fear, moments when the distance felt unbearable, but neither of them ever let go. Their bond was not loud or dramatic. It was steady, patient, and deeply rooted. As time went on, the idea of living separate lives started to feel wrong. Farah was no longer a child, and Kevin was tired of hiding something that felt so pure. One day, Farah finally asked how long they would remain this way, loving each other from a distance, in silence. Kevin thought about it for a long time. He thought about his financial condition, his responsibilities, and the uncertain future. Then he thought about Farah, about the years she had given him without asking for anything in return. That night he wrote back that it was time to stop hiding and start choosing each other openly. Around that time, Kevin got work in a city far away. The distance grew, but so did their emotional connection. They spoke whenever they could, sharing tired voices and quiet hopes. Kevin worked long hours, saving money, dreaming of a life where Farah would no longer have to wait. One day, Kevin returned from the distant city. His body was exhausted, but his heart was clear. He met Farah, and together they made a decision that felt both frightening and right. They chose to get married. There were no celebrations, no crowds, no announcements. They did not tell their families. It was a simple nikah with a few witnesses and a sincere prayer. For Kevin, it felt like his life had finally found its meaning. He believed that all the pain he had endured was leading him to this moment. That night, Kevin slept with peace in his heart. believing that the hardest part of their story was finally over for a short while. After the Nikah, life felt calm. Kevin returned to his job in the distant city, carrying the comfort of knowing that Farah was now his wife. The distance was still there, but it no longer felt empty. Their conversations were filled with reassurance and quiet dreams of living together openly one day. Kevin kept telling himself that this was only a temporary phase, that patience would soon turn into stability. Farah, however, was facing a storm she could not fully explain over the phone. Slowly, her family began to sense that something was different. Questions turned into suspicion, and suspicion turned into pressure. When the truth finally came out, the atmosphere in her home changed completely. What had once been normal suddenly felt hostile. Her family reacted with anger and disbelief. They told her she had destroyed their trust and dishonored them. Every day, Farah was reminded of her responsibilities, her parents, her 3 younger sisters, her studies, and the expectations placed on her shoulders. They told her that Kevin had no future to offer, that this marriage would only bring suffering, and that her choices were selfish. Farah tried to resist at first. She cried, argued, and begged them to understand. At night, she spoke to Kevin in a trembling voice, trying to stay strong. Kevin listened helplessly from miles away, promising her that he would come and fix everything. But promises sounded weak against constant pressure. The emotional blackmail grew stronger. Her family warned her that her sisters' lives would be ruined because of her decision. They threatened to stop her education and isolate her completely. Farah began to feel trapped, torn between the man she loved and the family she could not abandon. Kevin sensed the change in her voice. She sounded exhausted, broken in ways he could not see. He told her to hold on, to believe in their love, to trust him a little longer. But Farah was fighting a battle alone, one that slowly drained her strength. Eventually, the pressure became unbearable. Surrounded by fear, guilt, and tears, Farah was forced to agree to a divorce. The moment the words were spoken, something inside her collapsed. Her hands shook, her heart screamed, but her voice stayed silent. When Kevin found out, the world stopped. He couldn't understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. He didn't shout or blame her, he simply felt empty. It was as if the ground beneath him had disappeared, leaving him standing in nothing. Days passed in silence. Kevin went to work, came back, and lived on autopilot. 2 months later, a message appeared on his phone. It was from Farah. She wrote that she had been under unbearable pressure, that she had been helpless and afraid. She told him that the divorce was not her choice and begged him to wait. She promised that once her studies were completed and her family's situation improved, she would come back to him. Kevin read the message with tears in his eyes. Despite everything, he believed her. Waiting was something he already knew how to do. He replied with a single line, telling her that he would wait, no matter how long it took. For a brief moment, hope returned. But it didn't last. Soon after, Farah's phone went silent. Calls stopped going through. Messages were left unread. Then Kevin realized that he had been blocked. There was no explanation, no goodbye, no closure, just sudden, painful silence. Kevin tried to understand, but there were no answers. Farah had vanished from his life, leaving behind memories, promises, and unanswered questions. What remained was a quiet pain that settled deep inside him, heavier than words could describe at first. Kevin refused to believe the silence was permanent. He told himself it was temporary, that maybe Farah needed time, that circumstances had forced her to disappear for a while. He kept checking his phone, hoping to see her name light up the screen. Every vibration felt like a possibility, every quiet moment like a test of patience. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Still nothing. The silence grew heavier, pressing down on him in ways he couldn't explain to anyone. Kevin continued going to work, speaking when necessary, smiling when expected. From the outside, life looked normal. Inside, everything felt hollow. At night, when the world slowed down, memories came back without permission. The rooftops, the small waves, the handwritten letters, the simple promises. He replayed conversations in his mind, wondering where everything had gone wrong. He never blamed Farah completely. Somewhere deep inside, he knew she had been crushed by circumstances stronger than love. People around him suggested he move on. Some said time would heal him. Others said he deserved better. Kevin listened politely, but never argued. How could he explain that some bonds do not end just because people separate? How could he explain that love does not always disappear? It sometimes just goes quiet. He saved her messages, reread her words, and held onto them like proof that what they had was real. On difficult nights, he would write letters he never sent, pouring out emotions with no destination. Writing became his way of surviving, his way of keeping her presence alive without disturbing her silence. Years passed. Farah never returned. There was no message, no apology, no explanation. Slowly, Kevin stopped expecting anything. The hope faded, not with anger, but with exhaustion. Waiting no longer felt like loyalty, it felt like acceptance. One evening, Kevin found himself near the old place where everything had begun. He looked up at the rooftops, now quiet and empty. There were no waves anymore, no signals, no silent conversations, just open sky and fading light. He realized then that some love stories are not meant to be completed. They exist to change people, not to stay with them forever. Farah had come into his life to teach him how to trust again, and she had left him with the strength to stand alone. Kevin moved forward, not because the pain disappeared, but because he learned how to carry it. The love he lost became the foundation of the person he was becoming. His struggle did not break him, it shaped him. The story did not end with reunion or closure. It ended with growth, silence, and survival. And in that quiet ending, Kevin understood one final truth. Some people become memories, but the lessons they leave behind last a lifetime. This story is not fiction. It is a real story from Rahim Yar Khan, Pakistan, a true reflection of love, loss, and struggle. What you have read so far is only one chapter of a much longer journey. Behind this pain lies years of hard work, patience, and silent battles that transformed a middle-class boy into someone far greater than his circumstances. To understand the full struggle, the sacrifices, and how an ordinary person rose to become a star, make sure to watch the remaining parts. This is not just a love story. It is a story of survival, growth, and becoming someone stronger than yesterday.